A lot of artists don't struggle because they're arrogant or stubborn. Some do, but most don't. I would argue, especially early in an artist's career, they tend to struggle more when they're trying to be too agreeable. They're professional, they're very open to feedback, they have a very kind demeanor, they're very adaptable. But what ends up happening over time, if you compound this over time, and if you don't keep tabs on yourself and your artistic career, you start to feel like you're losing something artistic. You start to lose a feeling of integrity and ownership over your own artistic career. As a little disclaimer, perhaps, being adaptable, being agreeable is something that in many parts of my career contributed in a positive way. I had to learn how to work with directors, with clients. I had to learn how to be a team player. I had to understand that this project is not all me, the way it might feel like when you're younger or you haven't yet trained professionally, you haven't worked with a team and you're just doing your own thing as an artist. All of those things are extremely valid. It's important to also add that the early survival of your career also depends on your ability to be adaptable. If I was the type of artist that thought I knew better than everybody else and I complained about instructions and I was too proud in what I did and I didn't want to adapt myself to the needs of the studio or the project, I wouldn't have held on to my job for very long and I wouldn't have been able to build artistic and professional credentials. Those are extremely important. However, as I gained more skill and as I started to make more of a name for myself years into my career, I started to question why I said yes to too many things. And I think one of the reasons being is because saying yes felt safer than saying no. I felt like turning down work, turning down a client, not agreeing to take on certain projects because I didn't feel I was particularly qualified or suited for that type of project was a low-key form of career suicide, and you should take every opportunity you have. However, that didn't turn out to be the case over the long term. If you're in this phase in your career right now where you're just trying to find your footing and find a place and find a feeling of acceptance in your studio or with your clients, that's not a sign of insecurity or a lack of integrity. That's a sign that you're being conscientious. So the problem I want to highlight, and the thing I want you to be mindful of moving forward in your career, is that the problem is not kindness. Kindness is not a problem. Kindness is something you want to carry on through your entire career, long into your senior citizen ages. That's perfect. But the thing you got to watch out for is permanence. And I think that where this bad habit of being a people pleaser starts to creep in is actually before you become a professional. I learned on my own, and I learned pre-social media. There was no internet when I was a young kid learning how to draw. There was no Instagram. There was no TikTok. There was no YouTube. There was none of this stuff. I was just an artist going to bookstores, going to different lessons and workshops and ateliers and learning how to draw and going to school and doing my thing. But nowadays, the feedback that we get is not just from a professor or from our peers in school. That feedback that we're getting is from the World Wide Web, from people of every different walk of life, from every different artistic practice and style. And this creates a kind of potpourri of feedback that, especially if we're younger and we're more susceptible to influence, this can really make us paranoid to express ourselves in a unique way. And for me, I think one of the most important questions I ever asked myself as a professional is, what am I trying to say? What am I all about? Who am I as an artist? What this ends up doing is you kind of pull yourself outside of your own artwork. This happens to me even to this day. You start repeating what you're doing all the time. You delete your work and start over all the time because you're afraid of how this artwork will be seen and critiqued. But if every time you try to explore something different or express something different or show a different side of yourself artistically to grow, and people go, ugh, gross, I liked your old stuff better, you can see how that can really stunt growth, artistic growth, particularly if you're somebody who hasn't found their voice yet. And the problem being is, Everybody's opinion's different. Some people come from a design background and they're very, very technical and they're very, very pragmatic. Other people come from a fine arts background and they're like, hey, buddy, you do it your own way. I'm here to explore your world. And some people are illustrators and they're more interested in what's the narrative behind this and how are you communicating yourself graphically in a way that makes you unique from the rest of the audience out there. And as such, you're getting such incredibly conflicting artistic DNA in all of this feedback that can send your head into a tornado of confusion, as it did for me. And at a certain point, you have to put your foot down and you have to say, guys, thank you for your feedback. This is about me, and this is where I want to go moving forward. And if I don't make a commitment to myself artistically, as I did at a certain point in my career, I'm never going to gain any momentum. I'm constantly going to be chasing after trends. And that to me is the opposite of what artistic exploration should be. Remember, artists in many cases are trend setters, not trend followers, at least in the purest sense of the word. So what I think is crucially important in any artistic career is that you need to take a moment at some point, either early on or later on, depending on how you do your thing, to stop and ask yourself, where am I going with all of this stuff? Where's the end goal? Am I just chasing after the milk truck? Am I trying to chase after popularity? Or do I have something more specific? But you have to be able to make that decision before you really start taking on feedback a lot, because feedback only works when you know what you want to build in the first place. Remember something. Confidence does not come from praise. It might when you're really, really young and you don't have a sense of identity yet, or young in your career and you don't have a sense of artistic identity yet. You need that encouragement to say, hey, you're going in the right direction, and or here's a couple of tips you can use to grow. But in the long term, if you're constantly praise hungry, if you're constantly chasing after the praise of other people, you're not going to gain confidence. You're in fact going to start losing it. Confidence comes from making decisions, sticking to those decisions, and then working hard to see them succeed. And that's something you have to do yourself. Now, just to clarify, I am not trying to tell you to be stubborn, to be hard-headed. But what I am telling you is that direction requires boundaries. If you're constantly trying to please everybody, you're going to end up pleasing nobody, especially yourself. Because the more you try to please everybody, the more you start to lose ownership. You start to lose agency over your own artistic expression. In order to find your identity, you need to be selective about the things you like and dislike. I can honestly say that once I clicked artistically for myself later on in my career, I started becoming much more selective about the influences, about the inspirations, about the references that I used. I used to follow any and every artist out there who had great advice. And although they are all still fantastic artists that I love to this day, I tend to gravitate towards and adhere to artists who I feel live within an artistic ecosystem that emotionally resonates with me. If you're an artist trying to find your voice, which is so important to all of us, it's very important to me, I know that much, and to every student I've ever worked with, you don't find your voice by trying to reach everyone. You find it by discovering who you are and communicating who you are so clearly that other people recognize it and, more importantly, respect it. And also understand that some people don't. Some people won't respect your decisions. Some people won't follow your decisions. And that's perfectly fine. I produce a certain type of work, certain types of YouTube videos, certain types of paintings. And I know out there are my kindred spirits who love the same kind of stuff that I do, that play the same games and read the same books and love the same stories. And they're my kindred spirits. To those who don't, I don't get hurt when I don't get the attention from everybody, because I know that some people just don't vibe with what it is that I do. And you need to be okay with that as an artist. A lot of artists think that they need more motivation or discipline. You have to know who you are, as I've written on my arm here. Know thyself. You have to know who you are and trust that that's enough. And when you find outside guidance from a teacher, from a mentor, from a friend, from a colleague, from a fellow artist, from a family member that understands that side of you and offers you help to reinforce that, that's where real growth starts to happen. You don't gain direction by pleasing more people. You gain it by finally knowing which decisions are yours to make. Since you stuck it out all the way to the end, I'm going to teach you a bit of a tongue twister phrase in Polish because I'm learning, I'm a beginner, and I want to drag you along the way. But I figured I wanted to increase the difficulty level a little bit because learning a new language can be a hell of a tongue twister, and Polish is no exception to that. And this is actually a very famous Polish proverb. And the proverb is Jesteś nie narodził się człowiek, który mógłby zadowolić wszystkich. Try that. That'll probably take you around 30 attempts to get it, if you're lucky. Jesteś nie narodził się człowiek, który mógłby zadowolić wszystkich. Which means, the man has not yet been born who can please everybody. How appropriate is that? Okay, so one more time, just to train your ear a little bit. Jesteś nie narodził się człowiek, który mógłby zadowolić wszystkich. Jezus Maria. That's a hell of a tongue twister. So good luck with that. And of course, if you enjoy these videos, you're welcome to subscribe. I won't hold it against you if you want to. Go for it. I won't look. Go ahead and do it. And of course, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.